What's up guys, welcome back, and in this video I'd like to polish up our application. We'll look at some validation as well as other things like toast notifications, loading spinners, and page animations. These things are often overlooked but are important in giving your users a good experience. So the first thing I want to do here is add the name for the user that's logged in. Right now I'm logged in as a user, and I just want some sort of greeting here. So let's go ahead and do that. So into our code, I'm going to go into the to-do list, and I am going to put it right above the input. So right here, let's just put like welcome name or something like that. So welcome and name. And let me just put this data over here in our data. Now, it's probably a good idea to store this in your Vuex store because you'll probably need this across different components in your app. But for demo purposes, I'll just put it here. Let me just test if it works for now and see how that looks. Okay, let me just put it in a container. Let's call it name container. And let's just give it a margin bottom. Let's put it here. Name container 16 or something. Okay. So if you remember our Laravel API, we actually have an endpoint that's /user, and this gets the info of the currently logged in user, and we just want this name field here. So let's go ahead and make an Ajax request in our code. So let's do it here. Let's do it at the same time that we are retrieving the to-do. So let's duplicate this. Let's do this store dispatch retrieve name. And then after that, let's resolve it. The response. And this .name is going to be response.data.name. So after a successful response, we should set that property. Let's set this to blank for now. And let's go ahead and go into our store and make that method. So it's going to be similar to the retrieve to-dos. So let me just grab that. Grab this. And retrieve name. Actually, we're going to want to return a promise. So let me just grab this one here. So this one returns a promise, and we're going to do that in here. Just paste this. So this is get, and the endpoint is user. Don't need this. And that should do it. Let's see if that works. Okay, there you go. That's the name of the user that's logged in. Okay, the next thing I want to do is work on some validation. So if I log out here, and if I try to log in with a bad username, so bad@bad.com, you'll see that nothing happens. But if you go into the console, there is an error here. So let's go ahead and make some nice error messages. Okay, let's see if I can work split screen. Okay. So into our login component, I'm just going to make a container for the errors up here somewhere. So right here, I'm going to make a new div with that class, and error goes here. Okay. And I'm just going to paste in some CSS so it's styled like an error message. So I'm just going to put it down here. And I'm basically just ripping off the Bootstrap alerts. There it is. It looks good. Okay, so back into our login component. Let's make a new data property for our error. So we'll call it server error. Make it empty for now. And we'll set this to server error. Server error. Okay. And don't worry about this because we'll put a vif directive on this in a second. So down here where we're logging in, we can catch the error. So catch error, and let's just console log, see what we're getting. Error. See what we get with that. Okay. We might have to console log error.response. See if that gives us anything useful. Okay, there you go. So we just want the data. So let's go ahead and set server error to error.response.data. See if that works. Okay. We also would like to clear the error, the password once it's an error. So this.password is empty. See if that does anything. Okay. And let's set a conditional on this. So if server error. Okay, so you can't see it initially there. Cool. But if we try something, awesome. Okay, let's do the same thing for our register component because the errors are slightly different here. So I'm just going to copy this, go to register, paste that in. Let's make a new data property. So server error. And let's catch that error as well. So catch error, and let's console log it. So I'm going to do error.response. And let's see what we get. Clear this out. Okay, so here's our response. And here's an overall message, which is pretty generic. It says the given data was invalid. But if you look into this errors property, there are specific errors for each field that has an error. So this is what we're interested in, and we want to display these errors in sort of like an unordered list up here. So let me just change this to .data.errors. Errors. Let's try it again. Let's clear this. Okay, so we have an object. And each one of these are properties. But all we want are the values. So we can do something like this. Let me just continue console logging it so you can see what I'm trying to do here. So object.values is going to get all these values that we need. And I'm just going to console log that. See what we get. Okay, so now we have an array. And now in our template, we can just iterate over these and render them accordingly. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to remove this console log. We're going to set this to server errors. And same up here. And I'm going to set this .server errors to what we have here. Remove that, remove that, remove that. Okay. Now let's see what we get. Did I not change it? Server error. Okay, sorry, this. Okay, do it again. So now we can just iterate over this array and display it accordingly. So let's go ahead and do that. So I am going to make another div and do a v4 in here. And I'm going to do value key. It's just an array, so in server errors, oops. Okay. And we need a key, and the key is just going to be key. And what do we want to output? Let's see what we get when we just put the value. Okay, let's see what we get. Let me just erase this one. We don't need this one anymore. All right, let's try it again. Let's refresh that. Oops, forgot to save it, sorry. Okay, so we just want to print out the first thing in the array. So we can just do something like this. And there you go, that's all we want. And let's see if the other errors work. So if we fill this out, but give a bad email. Okay, I have browser validation going on here, so let's give a password. I think in Laravel you need at least 6, so let's give only 3. Okay, so there you go. We're getting proper messages for our server-side validation. At this point, I'd probably add some browser validation. So I would add a required attribute here and make sure I have input type equals email. Browser validation is so easy to do and is usually what I resort to after I've done server validation. But for this demo, I am going to use a front-end validation library. And one of the pros of using that is that it's consistent across all browsers. So let me just change this to text so it doesn't interfere with it. And the one I'm going to use is called vee-validate. It's one of the most popular Vue ones. So let's go ahead and make use of this. Grab this, save. Okay, that's done. So we just have to add this directive in the fields we want to validate. So let's go ahead and add it on these 3. So name, okay, let's do required. Okay, so this one, the rules are very similar, if not exactly the same as the ones in Laravel. So that's a good thing since we're using Laravel and we love Laravel. Okay, so this one is email. So required and email. And this one is a password. Let's go ahead and add min6 to match the server-side validation. And we also need a placeholder for the errors. So let me just grab this. We'll style it in a second. Let's just get it showing on the page. So right here underneath the input, I'm just going to do that. And we have to match this. So it's a name. Yep. Same for this one. This one's email. And this one's password. Okay, see if that works. Oh, I forgot to install it, sorry. Okay, we just need to do this in our entry point. So our main.js, I'm just going to put in here. And just put this down here. Okay. Let me just take out the semicolons. Save that. Okay. Does it work? Okay, there you go. And the password. Cool. Okay, let me just style this quickly. So I'm going to go into my master view and add a new one called form error, back to register, and it's just, I think I can do this. Okay, so form error. Okay, I'm also going to put a red border if there's an error as well. I'll just do it for email, and then I'll edit in the name and the password. So to do that, you just can bind class and conditionally add classes based on some condition. So in our case, so just make an object, and we want to add the class input error, which we'll add CSS for in a second, if the errors is a property that the vee-validate package gives us. So errors that has email. And let me just add that input error. So back here, I'm just going to do input error border 1 pixel solid, red's fine. See if this works. And it does, cool. So I'm just going to add it for the other two as well. Okay, cool. So I added it on the other fields, and let's go ahead and submit. See what happens when we submit. So it still submits to the server, and we're getting our server-side validation here. But what I want to have happen is not be able to submit until all the errors are fixed. So how do we do that? If you go into the documentation, if you go into examples, there is an example here in Code Sandbox. And the one we're interested in is the validating forms one. So if you go into this component, this is the one for it. So if we submit, you'll see that it doesn't submit to the server, and that's the case we want. So if you look at the code, you'll see that the form is submitting to this method, validate before submit, and here's the code for that. Let me just grab this, and we'll do the same thing. So back to our code, we are going to do validate before submit, and then we'll make our own method here. Let's paste that in. So if it reaches this line, then this is where all the errors on the front end happen. So we can just comment this out. And if it reaches this line, then everything is okay. So we can just call, we don't need this return. I don't think we need this return. We can just call the register function. And let's see if that works. So let's see if only front end happens when we click this. And it does, cool. And if you fix them, let's see if this works. And it does, cool. I'll add the front-end validation for the login form later on. It'll be available in the GitHub repo that I post. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is have a success message here. You can see that upon successful registration, we're using the Vue router and redirecting to this page. But I just want some sort of message or notification to the user that the registration happened successfully. So how do we do that? So if you look in here, you'll see that we're redirecting to the login component after a successful registration. So let's comment this out for now, and let's just see if we can get a success message that shows up here. So similarly to how we have an error message, we can do the same for a success message. So I'm going to make one called success message. And let me just type this in here so we can see how it looks. And I'm just going to paste in some CSS right here. And again, I'm just ripping it from Bootstrap. All right, looks good. Back to our register. Let's just put a v-if on this. Success message, okay. And let's put that in our data property. So let me copy this. Success message. And let me just output this in here. So success message, okay. And now here we can just set that. So this dot success message equals registered successfully. And see if that works. Okay. Some guy at someguy.com, password. Okay, cool. And this is totally fine, but I want to show you how to pass props between different routes when you're redirecting. So let's bring this back. That goes up there. Let's bring this back. And to pass in parameters to a different route when you're redirecting, which is the case we need here, we can do this. So params, and let's just give it a name of data success message, and we'll accept that as a prop in the login component. And let's set it to this dot success message. But in our routes file, we have to make sure that that route, so login in our case, accepts props. So all we have to do is add a props field here, set it to true. And now let's go into our login component and let's accept that prop. So I can just put it here. So props, I'm going to accept data success message, and that's a string. Oops, let me just type this in. And now we can render out that success message like we were doing in here. I'm going to grab this, comment this out in register, and put it in login. So right here. And I believe I named it data success message, and I'll show you why in a second, instead of just naming it success message. Okay, let's see if that works. So let me just make sure everything looks good. Okay, so another. Okay, there you go. So one more small case I want to fix is this is going to stay even if we try to log in and there's an error. So I want this to disappear if we try to log in and there's an error. So if we go into our login component, that's the reason I named it data success message, because I am going to mutate the prop. So let's go ahead and, well, I'm not mutating the prop directly. I'm going to make our own property called success message. I'm going to set it to data success message. And then up here, this is going to be success message now. But now, if there's an error, we can set it to empty string. So let's try that again. This should disappear. Cool. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is add some toast notifications. It's just a fancier way of notifying your users. And there's a whole bunch of Vue toast packages, but the one I've found easiest to use is this one. There's a demo here too. So this one just had the nicest style out of the box. So I went with this one. So let me just install it. Okay. And let's install it. Let me just grab this for a sec because we're going to make use of the config. So let's just go into our main.js. And let me import that. And I'm going to grab this config. Just put it right here. Change it to const. And I'm going to set the position to bottom right, just because the menu is in the top right. And the timeout is actually the property that defines how long it stays on. I thought it would be show duration, but it's not. It's timeout. So it's set to 5 seconds. And let's put the progress bar on. So this is global to every single toast notification. And I think I have to, Vue use it. So let's put it down here. Cool. Okay. Now to use it, all we have to do is call this with a title and a message. So the title is this and the message is that. Okay, cool. So let's just do it in our register component. And for demo purposes, I'm just going to make a created hook and we'll just show it when the component is created. And then we'll move it into where we actually want it to go. Okay, let me just indent this. Okay, so title is registered and the message is going to be you can log in here. Okay, see if this works. So let's try. I forgot one step. I forgot to add the CSS. So we can actually do this. but I'm going to do it a slightly different way. So I'm going to put it in master so it's available everywhere, but instead of importing it using the JS syntax, it's going to import it in the CSS. Where is my CSS? Right here. And it's going to do @import URL that, and let's see if that works. There you go. So register successfully. You can log in here. Cool. So I'm going to move that to where it's supposed to go. Oops. Register. So I'm just going to grab this. Don't need this anymore. So right here, it's still going to push to the login page, but it's also going to show this toast message. And let's see if that works. We can set this to the success message. So we'll just do this.success message. Yep. Okay, so see if this works. Just refresh. Hello at hello.com, password. And there you go. Cool. Okay, the next thing I want to do is router page animations. So right now, when we click on a menu item, it automatically goes to that route. And that's fine. It's just that traditionally, when we're using server-side apps, we're kind of used to having a delay when we click on it, and it just looks less jarring. So let's put like a fade in and fade out animation as we click on these links. So we already made use of animation in the first video where I did animation. Actually, let me show you. When we are adding, and when we're deleting, there's animation here. And we're making use of the animate.css library. And we're going to do the same thing. So first of all, I'm going to grab that animate CSS library, and I'm just going to change. I'm going to move it to master because we want it everywhere. So I'm just going to move this to here. Okay. And this should still work. Okay, it does, but it's slow now. Let me just make sure. Okay, it's fine. And similarly to how we did it here, so let me show you how we did it. We just put a transition group, and this is the animate CSS class, fade in up and fade out down. It's pretty much the same thing. We just don't need a transition group. It's just a transition. Let me just show you. So right here where we're displaying the router view in our master, let's just wrap this in a transition. So transition name, the name doesn't matter because we're gonna, in this case it doesn't matter because we're not doing a custom animation. Enter active class is the animate CSS class we want to use. So fade in for something entering, and leave active class is animated fade out. And let me just close that, indent that, and that should do it. All right, so let me just log out, see how it looks. Okay, so two things. One, it's kind of slow. We'll fix that in a second. And you can see a sort of jarring effects. You can see both components come in, and once one of the component leaves completely, this one just jumps up. So how do we fix that? So by default, both transitions happen at the same time, if I'm not mistaken. So all we have to do to fix it is change that mode of animation. And to do that, we just change the mode, so right here, to out in. And what that's going to do is it's going to finish the animation for the component leaving first before the new one comes in. Just read the Vue docs. So Vue animation mode out in. It does a better job of explaining it than I do. Just read this. Okay, so did that fix it? Let's see if that fixed it. That jarring effect should be gone now. And it is cool. Okay. So let's just fix how fast the animation happens. And all we have to do to fix that is for each of these pages. So for home, I believe it's landing page. We just have to wrap everything in a class. Let's call it page wrapper. So I'm going to do that for everything. About page wrapper, register, page wrapper, login, page wrapper. And did I save those? Okay. Let me just add a new class here, page wrapper, and set the animation duration to something small. 0.2 seconds is what I found works for me. And now this animation should be much quicker. And there you go. I think that's a good speed. Why did the login take so long? Did I not save the login? Page wrapper. Okay. Oh, I didn't save this one. Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, let's quickly add a loading spinner and we'll call it a day. I think I already did this for one of my video in the series. I think it was in the Firebase one, but we'll do it again, but in a different location. So let's do it for the login, and I just want a spinner to happen while we log in and it's processing from the server. So probably like a spinner in here, and we'll also disable the button while it's loading. Okay, so I'm going to use this. I just Googled CSS Spinner, CS, or something like that, and I came across this site. And I'm going to use this one over here. So this is the CSS for it. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste this in my master. And let's put it here. CSS Spinner. And we're going to modify this a bit in a second. And this is the markup we need. So like I said, I'm going to put it in login. Let's put it in here. See how that looks. Okay, so that's a start. Let's make the spinner much smaller. So back to master. So let's change the width and the height. See if that makes it smaller. Let's take out the margin. Just do that. And let's change the border. Make it a bit smaller. Okay, so that looks good. And let's also wrap it in a container. So here's what I'm going to do. Do LDS ring container. I'm going to make it absolute. And I'm going to put it in the middle, see if this works. And in our login page, so login, I'm going to wrap this in a container. So LDS, LDS ring container. And that looks good to me. And let me just style the disabled state real quick. So let me just make it disabled. And yeah, there's no style on that, so let me just add that real quick. Oops, keep doing that. Master, I believe it's button submit. Okay, so I'm gonna do this disabled 25%, lighten actually. And the cursor should be, change it to not allowed. Cool. All right, let me change that back to login and disabled. Cool. And I'm going to make a new property here that is for loading, if it's loading. So right here, loading is false by default. And when we make an Ajax request, so right here, so this dot loading is true. And then right here should be false. And also when there's an error, it should be false. And then now we can conditionally show this. So LDS ring container v if equals loading. And if you click it, there you go. You see that loading spinner. Let's also disable it. So to disable it, all we have to do is bind disabled to loading. And there you go. Cool. You can add a spinner for the rest of the application wherever there's an Ajax request. So there you have it, guys. We managed to polish up our application, adding validation messages, animations, loading spinners to give our users a better overall experience. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.